We hear a lot about what's wrong with what we're doing to the environment, but I'm on the hunt for things we're doing that make a change for the better. What are we doing to be cleaner and greener? What do we need to change? And what does the future hold? So join me to Radar as I go global. Don't worry, I'll plant plenty of trees to offset the travel. Now, where's my passport? It's a well-known story and it goes something like this. Up through the ground came a bubbling crude, black gold, Texas tea. And life as we know it was never the same again. It was true for the Beverly Hillbillies, and it's true for the rest of us in a world that would barely cope without oil. Bugger. I suspect that not all of us appreciate just what goes into making fuel. Luckily, when it comes to oil, most of the work has already been done. Oil isn't a complex thing to make naturally. Simply start with some plants and animals that lived in or around ancient seas. Trap them under layers of sand and mud. Apply pressure, remove all of the oxygen, and hey presto, you have oil. The only catch is that it takes a couple of 100 million years. The hard part is getting it out of the ground and refining it into its many forms, such as petrol, plastic, cosmetics, or even fabric. Should we run out, then life without oil means life without many of the things we've become accustomed to. And what will we do then? With only a limited amount of oil left, we're looking for alternatives to fuel our future. And when it comes to fuel, it may be that we can't see the wood for the trees. Humans have been harnessing the energy of wood since cavemen created campfires, which is why I'm lumbering about in the forest somewhere near Rotorua in order to witness the majesty of the waratah. It's a nice day, look at that. Here we are in the bush, men on machines felling plantation forest. The waratah is capable of chopping down and stripping trees with the greatest of ease. And the best thing about it, it's local technology. And that's made in Takaroa.
Made in Takaroa, New Zealand built, sold all over the world.
God, it's long gone are the days of a guy standing there with a chainsaw and felling a tree down.
Yeah, it's the way of the future, all right.
They must be hard to drive.
Yeah, it takes a while to get skilled in that.
This is significantly more high-tech than the diggers I was brought up in. This has got 2 pedals and 2 joysticks, each of which has got 18 buttons on it. It's even got a computer, so I guess you can use that to update your Facebook status. About to chop down a tree. 15 seconds later, chop down a tree. Today's logging gangs can fell over 1,000 trees an hour. But the real difference is what happens to all of the timber that used to be considered waste and was simply left in the forest to rot. I'm meeting Shane, who refuses to let this waste timber go. Hi, Shane. Well, to waste.
G'day, Radar.
How you doing?
Good. How's yourself?
Very good. Here we are.
Excellent.
Assembling out here in the field in front of what appears to be quite a lot of logs. A lot of move to use this stuff as biofuel, biomass.
Yeah, it's happening. It's definitely happening. And it's happening at the cheapest source. And as we go further and that demand gets greater, we'll start to look at using a lot more of our forest residues for that too. So the logging contractor has made his logs, and this is the waste left behind. And I come in behind all the logging crews and generate as much value as I can out of it.
How much would be left behind?
Anywhere from sort of 10 to 15% can be left.
That's a lot of wood.
Yeah.
And it's not just unwanted branches and bark that Shane makes use of. Here at Red Stag Sawmill, he has an eye for the offcuts.
You can see you've got a defect, and what we do is we take it and say, OK, well, we can actually cut a piece of clear shook out of that.
So essentially you're just looking for any usable length where there's no defects?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And it gets put through a Red Stag. It's a remanufacturing plant. Yeah, finger joints are back together.
You often see it, I've bought it myself, you know, those lengths of timber that are finger jointed together, and I've never really thought about where they come from.
No, exactly. Yeah, well, this is where they come from. There's a lot of value already being put into a piece of timber by the time it gets to here. The log's been purchased, it's been gauged, it's been kiln dried. Out of any waste stream, there is a certain amount of truly, good value product you can pull. Yeah.
Tim from Red Stag is also fired up about using waste wisely. The sawmill's boiler burns waste wood and shavings to generate its own electricity. And how much energy would come out of timber?
A lot. If I had a bit of timber this long, bit of 4x2, we're talking about an energy equivalent of 8 hours of a 1-bar heater, and we can produce up to 3.5 megawatts of energy. Enough energy to support about 7,000 domestic houses. Using waste wood for energy is just a no-brainer. We produce waste wood, we've got to do something with it. At the moment, the most cost-effective option is to burn it for energy. Maybe in the future we may be able to produce biofuels from it. If you looked at an equivalent site burning fossil fuels, their carbon footprint would be probably 40 times greater than what it is here.
Right. And I guess that wouldn't even, you know, then you've got to ship all that fuel in as well. You've got to dig it up out of the ground.
And we've still got to dispose of our waste wood, which would be an enormous cost if we didn't burn it.
So someday in future land, the thousands of logs we export could be replacing the energy we currently import in the form of oil. And to prove it, I'm moving from the backwoods to a backwater. Because in Louisiana, they're experimenting with gasifying biomass, which simply means turning waste wood into gas to power all manner of things. This is America's energy state, a top producer of crude oil and natural gas. Doesn't get much better than this. If only went for the alligators and the mosquitoes and the snakes. I think I'll pass on a swim. Instead, I'll conserve energy by snoozing in my shanty boat because tomorrow I'm looking at a use for alligators other than scaring tourists. Welcome to Lafayette. Here, the University of Louisiana is investigating alternatives to oil. While some of their scientists are experimenting with converting wood chips to gas as a potential power source, across the campus, Professor Rakesh is looking at quite a different fuel source. Hello, Professor. Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Not many campuses have an alligator pond.
Not many, not many.
Alligators are farmed for their skins and meat, but Professor Rakesh's Gatorade is a biofuel based on the fat that is usually thrown away. So where better for us to chat about biofuel than on the bio with veteran swampy Tucker.
In the United States, we produce only about 30% of our oil. Our reserves are even less. You know, our reserves may last only 10 years. It's a big issue. What do we do?
Is the key to sustainable fuel production for areas to look around their local vicinity to see what it is that they've got that they could use? It might be alligator fat or waste pine trees. Local refineries using local materials.
What would be the typical size of a big alligator?
Farm raised about 7-8 foot, about 150 pounds.
150 pounds, so even if they have about 15% fat, that'll be about 22 pounds of fat.
Yeah, that's a lot
in
of
the
fat.
alligator. No,
Yeah.
so that fat needs to be processed. Oh, you can hear this. Huh?
Is it an alligator?
Bullfrog.
Oh, it's a bullfrog.
Bullfrog. That's why the bullfrog.
You don't have to, they're not dangerous, are they?
No, they're good to eat, though.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Like,
In Cajun country, if it moves, we eat it.
or in the future, you better, if it moves, you might better use it to power your boats.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about the idea of alligator fuel?
If it's a byproduct and it's going to waste now, yeah, why not? They used to use it as candle oil at one time.
Yeah. So no different to whales and seal oil, and we used to juice penguins. But I guess the only difference is that penguins are a little bit more attractive than an alligator.
Well,
Is that a matter of opinion?
You can
No.
produce more alligator in captivity than you could penguins in captivity.
It'd be safer to produce penguins, though, wouldn't it, really? Alligators are a bit bitey. And there's another environmental upside. So at one stage, alligators were nearly extinct.
The alligator population comeback is mainly due to the Wildlife and Fisheries egg program. In the wild, only 10% of babies that hatch will survive. The owls and the crows are their worst predators. They come from above and they'll grab a baby alligator and leave with it. And then there's otter and mink and raccoon. But in captivity, they get almost 100% survival rate after they hatch. The alligator farms would buy eggs from trappers, and they release a certain percentage of them back into the wild after they're a year old, which gives them a much, much higher survival rate than in the wild. And that's how the population of alligators grew so fast.
It's time to head back to the lab. So it's see you later, alligator, and hello, algae.
lipids are the bread and butter of the biodiesel industry. Doesn't matter where they came from. They can come from alligator fat, they can come from the microorganisms, they can come from vegetable oils. Why not algae? So we think that algae is the final answer, although it may be distant in future. But I sincerely believe that that's where our future lies.
So those beakers that you've got bubbling away in a lab down there, they could contain the breakthrough that will power
That will
things
contain the power
years to come.
for our future to come.
When things get scarce, one option is to go without, which is why I'm off to Silver City, New Mexico to visit writer and goat herder Doug Fine. Doug decided to try living for a year without petroleum. And if you think that sounds tough, try doing it in the desert. Hi, Doug.
Hey,
Fancy seeing you
welcome.
here. Thank you. Who would have thought I would have ended up here in sunny New Mexico?
I'm glad you did. Let's start this way.
Should we go and milk a goat?
Have you milked a goat?
Yes, I have milked a goat, although not by hand.
Let me just get her going. Once it starts flowing, I'm sure I know it's a little bit.
Did you ever imagine you're going to end up here in New Mexico milking a goat?
Everybody else is more surprised than I am that I ended up here. You're on it. I hear milk coming out.
That's definitely milk. I'm tempted to take a little bit straight from the source, actually.
You should. All the goats, by the way, are named for singers that I like, but whose voices kind of sound goat-like. So
Right.
This is Nico for the Velvet Underground singer, who I think the human actually might be part goat.
That is delicious. Good work, goat.
Yeah, really, thanks, Nico. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, Nico, not only a fine voice, but a wonderful udder.
So we're looking now at the beginning of the...
One of the hardest things to ditch as a farmer is, of course, fuel. Doug hasn't gone back to the horse and cart. Instead, he has re-engineered his massive truck to run on straight cooking oil.
The locals give me that finger wave on their steering wheel because I look like just another rancher. But after having gone past, they smell the vegetable oil exhaust, and there's something liberal about this guy, and we don't quite know what it is. The truck looks good, but it doesn't quite smell right. Suddenly I'm rooting for, unhealthy American dietary trends because I drive on Kung Pao chicken grease. The deal is you're driving on two different tanks. In cold weather, you're starting up on your normal diesel or biodiesel tank. And I have a little control panel in here, and when it reaches a certain temperature, it will convert over to the second fuel tank, which is 80 gallons of just restaurant grease, filtered. Colonel's secret herbs and spices, filtered out. The fellow who did this conversion on the vehicle, who was a two-tour Iraq veteran, said he had an epiphany as his chopper was being fired on in Iraq that the whole raison d'etre for the wars might be eliminated if you just cut the petroleum out of the equation.
So there's 5 gallons. That'll keep me going 100 miles.
You did a year living without petroleum. How did that work?
Pretty well. On the obvious things, driving on vegetable oil instead of petroleum, that's great. Solar power for almost all of the electricity of the house, solar power for the water pump, drip irrigation in the garden, goat's milk and milk products for the protein. All that is great, but what you discover as you do it more is that you always have further to go, and there's hidden petroleum and things. What I'd really like to do is have algae produced in the duck pond associated with the greenhouse and basically fill the truck up with algae or some biofuel, and just wean yourself from the refinery. That'd be super nice.
It strikes me that there is so much more here to think about than I ever had to worry. I'm worried if a goat got into my crop and ate some tomatoes, but here, what have you got?
Well, the main thing we've got is coyotes. One I named Dick Cheney because of his unauthorized surveillance of the ranch. He basically cased out the place and wiped out the chicken coop. Now, I can't bear any anger towards the canine Dick Cheney because he's doing what I ask of myself and other people, which is he's walking to work, he's eating locally.
And he's eating organically.
Exactly, right?
Given what I've seen here in the gas-guzzling USA, we're still some way down the track from a sustainable, biofueled future. But when you consider that it's really only around 100 years since people were travelling these very roads in wagons dragged by stubborn mule and flatulent oxen, who knows what we'll be using 100 years from now. Whatever it may be, I'm not entirely sure it's going to be good news for the alligators. Massey University is New Zealand's answer to Lafayette, at least when it comes to fuel research. Professor Youssef is studying both algae and ways to extract hydrogen gas from wastewater. What's going on there?
We are using a photosynthetic bacterium to produce hydrogen from organic wastewater. So you can see these bubbles of hydrogen rising. We just want to see how much hydrogen we can produce from how much waste, at what rate can we produce it. Hydrogen is a potential fuel. You could burn it in modified variants of car engine if you like.
It's always sort of invigorating to think that, you know, some huge breakthrough can come from something as simple as a converted fish tank with some flagons of bacteria and some tinfoil and some pipes. When I look at things like this happening, it makes me quite excited to be a human, if you know what I mean.
Yes, that we are able to influence nature in ways that, yes.
And that there's all these clever people out there trying to figure stuff out. It makes me feel that I don't do very much with my day.
Okay.
That could be the start of the future right there.
Possibly, yeah.
Sort of gives you goosebumps. He's also experimenting with ways to farm this green gold in an efficient, affordable and large-scale manner.
We are trying to understand the production process. We are trying to reduce the cost of production, how to reduce the cost of the biomass, how to reduce the cost of separating the cells, algae cells, from the water, how to reduce the cost of extracting the oil from the cells so that fuels from algae are someday economically competitive with petroleum drive.
Will there be a day where I'll drive home in my algae-fueled car and just hook it up to an algal growing system or a plant in my own house?
I don't think that's likely. What will happen is algae will be grown somewhere, they'll be processed in some kind of a refinery, and you'll still have to go to your filling station to fill up your car.
Right. So I won't have my own little processing plant.
You won't see the difference in how you get your fuel.
Which is why it's good news that there's a chap up north already producing a future fuel in his garage. Andreas is using waste fruit and sunshine to juice up his car. Hello, Andreas.
Oh, hello, Radar.
How are you?
Good.
So you're very busy at the still?
Yes.
What have we got bubbling away in there?
We've got about 40 litres of fermented kiwi producing ethanol.
So what are we doing here? We're just sealing it up?
Yes.
That looks suspiciously like dough.
That is dough.
Suppose it doesn't turn into a useful form of bread at the
we
end
could
of it?
eat it.
I could make a lot of dough-based puns using dough to save dough, but I'm not going to do that. It's not my style. It doesn't look like a sophisticated piece of technology.
That's just an old hot water boiler, and you just cut them in half and it's ready to use. Oh, it's
Then
already
we've got
coming.
Look at that. What do you do with it then? I mean, obviously you're not going to be putting it in bottles and giving it away for Christmas.
We could do that.
What a beautiful flame. Look at the colour. So that's a good sign?
That's a good sign. That means the concentration is fine. It comes out about 60 or 70%. We concentrate it up, at least 92% of ethanol, and that way we can run it into the petrol tank. Now we're running gas to heat it, and I don't like that. That's why I came up with the solar distill. That's my first prototype of a solar system. We can produce about 20 litres a day with that unit, but we're going about 5 times the size. So we make at least 100 litres of ethanol a day.
What would the end goal with something like this be?
That each farmer has got access to a distill where he can run his own fuel out of his own produce, grown on his own farm. So it means he's complete independent, not spending any energy, not wasting any fuel, and you don't rely on an overseas import of oil or whatever.
What else could we use?
Old rotten potatoes, old rotten kumaras, sugarcane, raupo. You could use all sorts of organic material which has a sugar content. At the end, I want to use grass clippings.
And the great thing about that is, I suppose, that we don't have to wait for 200 million years to create a new fuel source. You know, it's all there growing right now.
It's a perfect recycle because the waste, after we've distilled, is not going to waste. It's a natural fertilizer. So we're actually just closing a cycle within our own farm. We're complete in our own ecosystem, really.
You could say you're almost creating a perpetual motion machine of fuel, the Holy Grail.
Yes, yes.
Once it's all done, you have a celebratory drink of...
That's for sure. That's for sure.
What kind?
We put some
kiwi fruit ethanol?
Persimmon in this case.
Persimmon.
Yeah, yeah.
God.
Oh, that's quite a nice taste.
Living the dream. Alcohol and driving don't normally mix, but in this case, it's the perfect cocktail. It seems to run very well.
You hardly feel a difference if it's ethanol or petrol.
So what are we running on now?
50-50, ethanol, petrol.
So you can run cars, tractors, chainsaws.
Any engine which runs on fuel can be converted in running on ethanol, easy. And newer cars, up to 99, you can go to 85 ethanol and 15 petrol. And the newest cars, you can go 100%.
100% ethanol. Yeah. Will there come a time, do you think, that New Zealand, you know, could become, I mean, entirely self-sufficient in fuel?
Definitely. We have that much land mass. It's so easy. Everything grows.
Here we are poodling around, half fueled by some leftover kiwi fruit.
Exactly. Rotten kiwi fruit.
I spend a lot of time looking at oil refineries because I find them befuddlingly complex. The process of taking oil and turning it into petrol, frankly, it's beyond me. And yet, Andreas's process, just so unfeasibly simple. Take fruit, rot fruit, boil fruit, capture juice, run car. And it strikes me that somewhere along the way, someone has been literally taking us for a ride. And it makes you think, why aren't more people doing that? We've all got spare fruit. If you go to your kitchen now, you've probably got a supply of fruit, but you've gone, oh, that's a bit past it. What am I going to do with that? I can either feed it to the chickens or the pigs, or I can put it in my special fuel reserve. All I need is a still. And how dangerous can that be? And isn't it great that in New Zealand, it is still legal to operate a still? That makes me inordinately proud to be a New Zealander. Either that, or somewhere along the way, our government said, I don't really care about you as a citizen. If you want to operate a still, be it on your head. Tune in next week for the good oil on the hidden potential of two weeds. One can feed us and clean up our water. The other one can be used to build houses, roads, bulletproof suits, and even makes a tasty pizza.